Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Hi, Cyndi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good.
Today we have Cyndi Brec. She is a fantasy romance YA author. Some would say you have Romantasy on your bio. And I'm so excited to hear all about your books. But first, my question is, for the new listeners that maybe haven't heard the Romantasy term, describe that for us.
Romantasy is a combination of fantasy and romance. You have to have a balance between both of them too in the story world. A lot of romantasy kind of goes down the darker path. My story does not go into anything with sexual content. It stops it before any of that happens. But in my story world, there's a lot of innocence, especially in the first book, The Therans Secrets Beneath Scars. But I love the romantasy because I don't like to read a book without that romance. And romantasy, and you add that element of fantasy to it. And there's just a different level of engagement that the reader gets with a world that they don't know, and then that innocence of that first meet or whatever relationships there. But anyhow, so romantasy is like my favorite genre.
Fine. Okay, but I have heard romantasy described as it's a fantasy where the romance is the primary plot. Do you agree with that definition, or do your books diverge from that definition?
Um, Romantasy is I don't know. I've read so many books that say that they're romantasy, and the romance is the second plot. Okay. However, I have a full series, and at the first start of my book, book one, it's definitely there. It's a strong element of it, but it's the fantasy aspect of the Theron world that's front and center. However, Teen Magazine did a review on it, and they said that the romantasy could have been taken out and separated from the fantasy. However, because I don't know, Zara just thought it was a great. She gave me a 4.5, but I personally, huh?
I was just congratulating you.
Thank you. But I personally think that when you have a series, that romance develops more through the second and the third book, especially as well read as I am in the romantasy world. I've seen that take off more in the second and third book. And so, yes, I would say that by the second and third book, definitely the romance aspect is more of a relevant part of it. But when you're emerging the reader and anchoring them into the first book, it's not always that case. So it just depends.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I somehow sometimes I think, okay, everybody's jumping on the romantasy bandwagon just to have it romantic because it's so hot and popular right now. So I just wanted to make sure we understood what we were talking about. Okay, but jump us into your world. Tell us about the world, the characters, everything.
Okay, so first of all, Callie has lost everything, her family, everyone, and she even loses more. Opening scene of the story. And she has to find out who she is, why she's different than everybody else. And she just doesn't like stumble onto everything. She's on a search for the origins of who she is, why she has powers. And this isn't a spoiler. This is something that you will learn in the first book, but she is an instrument of prophecy. So I have all three of the books done for this series. And so I know exactly where it ends. And so this book, book one, The Therans Secrets Beneath Scars, is all about her discovering who she is and getting to know the Theron world. And then the reader gets that first-hand perspective because it's written in first person. So it's a coming of age story. It's high tension, high risk. There's a lot involved because the Therans have their own purpose and it goes against the humans, and yet the humans don't know that there's Therans that exist because it's that kind of like a lost civilization in a world that already exists. So there's a lot of secrecy, and my tagline is "Secret stab deeper than a blade." So I run off of writing intrigue, but it's it's about forbidden curses and things like that. So it's definitely a rather intense story world. You know, the typical good versus evil. The interesting thing is that the Therans is in the three books, you're immersed into two different worlds, not just the Therans, you're taken into another lost civilization that will just totally blow your mind.
Well, that sounds really intriguing. But okay, so are we set in contemporary time?
We're set in modern times,
Okay.
but with historical elements, like there's archaic rules in the Theran world. Also, I have anchored the Theran world local to Ohio, and like she grows up in a house that we've lived in. History, her grandfather, who is the parental figure in her life, is also runs a mill that's old and ancient because I use history as an anchor in real settings throughout the world, whether it's Egypt, Italy, or whatever, but it initially starts in Ohio. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. So she thinks she's a human in the beginning, is that right? And I read a little bit of the tagline. You talked about she can see things in the future. So she kind of, I don't know if you call them prophecies or visions or.
Just visions.
Okay, so, and she loses her family and she foresees that, right?
Correct.
Okay, and so she's on this quest to figure out why she has these powers. And are the Therans live among the humans? Do the humans know they're different, or can the humans
The humans don't, at this point, the humans don't know anything about the Therans.
Okay.
You know, uh, how do you say it's best for the lost civilization to keep their secrecy, but they influence the political world that we have in Congress and stuff like that, and to bring about what favors them too. And the Therans, their purpose is that they're stewards of history, accurate history, not the history that's written by the victor of a war, but the history that is actually what transpired during that time. So taken from not from the victor's point of view. So
Okay.
there's a lot of intricate things within this world, but it's definitely fantasy driven, and there's a lot of elements of romance, kissing, innocent kissing, and stuff like that, prom, that kind of stuff. So,
oh, fun. And so, do the Therans have powers themselves?
yes, they do. Yes.
And do we get to know what powers, or does that give that away?
Oh, no, no, no. Like Callie has visions, but she has more than just that. But she learns. The fun thing about this world in Callie, her character, is that she's learning on the job. So the reader gets to see her stumbles, her foibles, and stuff like that. And they get to experience the learning curve. Because I mean, I didn't hand Callie a training manual and say, hey, this is what you have to do. No, she's learning on the job. And Tristan, the hero, he's the one that gets to help her. But there's such I love to run on intrigue and that whole aspect of you get halfway through a book, neither one of them know they're drawn to each other for a reason, but neither one of them know who the other one is. And it's like, wait, then he finds out because of a huge catastrophe. And I mean, I like to push my character to the max and have her experience things because I find that the reader likes that too. So, and it's definitely good and clean for 13s, 14-year-olds and on up. And I'm one of those that I don't know if you know Allison Goodman. She wrote The Dark Days Pact. It's a clean book. It's YA fantasy. I love books that submerge, the history of a world in with the world that we have now, and they kind of have those archaic rules and stuff, and then you got to navigate all of that. I don't know. I just love that. I just have a passion for it. And I love taking legends that have existed and twisting them to where you find out that it was something totally different. And associating with powers, it's kind of like Marvel comic strips on steroids, in some ways. But I don't know, it's just fun.
Neat. And
So,
where did you come up with the idea for the series?
well, actually, I always wanted to be a writer. So about well, I always had Callie in my head, but the older my kids got, the more free time I had, the more I found that I kept thinking about her, and to the point that I would get these ideas and they'd start like filming like a film or choreographed scene in my head. Oh, there's Smokey.
I told you he would come.
That's okay. That's okay. But this choreographed scene comes in my head, and it got to the point I was taking notes at night because I'd leave a notepad by my bed, or I'd turn on my flashlight on my phone and write stuff like this. And my husband was like, Cyndi, this is enough. But then when he saw that I was writing these things down, I was connecting these scenes together and then making a storyline. Because at that time I was a pantser. He was just like, wow, you know. And then when I got picked up to go the traditional route, it just totally blew his mind away, which now I'm on the indie route because my agent, he closed his doors just because the COVID and all that kind of stuff. But the whole aspect, it was just a huge compliment. But I just get these, I don't know if you've ever heard of James Scott Bell.
I don't think so.
Okay, but he writes, I'm not an outliner, I'm not a pantser anymore. I'm kind of like a plantster. I write these little sticky notes. I have act one, act two, act three. And these visions, these choreographed scenes I get, I write down like the dilemma, the result, what needs to happen, and then before it goes into the next scene. And then I could take the sticky notes. If I want to move them somewhere else on that 3-act plot structure, I can. So it's just, I don't know. It's my method of madness, but it's worked for me.
I did the exact same thing. I have and I thought it was to save a cat or something is where I got that from. But yeah, I have the 3 acts and I put my sticky notes up and I can move them around. And yeah, that works great. So
It does.
you have already released the first book, right?
Correct. Yeah, it came out February 20th of this past year.
Well, congratulations. So exciting. And you have planned for 2 more books in the series. Is that right?
Yes, I have one coming out next year, and then I have the last book is almost like 700 pages, and so I know, that, that comes out in 2027. So yeah, um, I am a slow writer, but I'm writing short stories in between the launch of the 3 main stories. So I have those 5 short stories that fill in the pieces that give you an idea of what's going on and stuff like that. One of them's like almost 80 pages, and it's just a journal, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And it's all from her point of view of her writing things and when she's 13, 14 years old and how she's floundering and like trying to figure out who she is and all this kind of stuff. But those 3 short stories launch, those prequels launch the main book. But then have 2 more coming out this year. And I have a true event that transpired at the historical watermill that we used to own, which is the setting of where Callie's growing up and she's working where Gramps owns, which is what I just said, that I used in the story, and I cultivated this creature and all this kind of stuff. And people don't know what's going on. They think somebody's stealing stuff, and then things return to the very same spot, but days later. And so I've totally taken real life events and twisted them. Like I said, I like to twist things and jazz it up, but work it into my story world. And my daughter just finished the story, the first one, and she absolutely loves it. Absolutely loves it. So, and I wrote to please kids that needed an imagination that wanted something fun and fresh and different. And this definitely, like I said, it's two different worlds within three books. So it's definitely different. So, but you could go to these places, these settings, and touch the wall that might have been where Callie worked, where she would have been cultivated in my head and stuff, because those mills, that mill exists and stuff. So it's kind of fun.
That is fun. Do you have like pictures of the mill and things like that on your website?
Yes, well, not on my website, but have put them on my Facebook page, my Instagram, and my X page. So I do have them up there. And so I created like a video trailer and stuff like that. But yeah, and then I gave a tour of just here last week. I gave a tour of the inside of the mill and let people know that like this is the staircase where Callie was standing so high and looking Tristan straight in the eye and revealing secrets about herself. Not all the secrets up front because it's got to be dropped a little bit here and a little bit there. But yeah, so yep, I'm definitely doing that. And my husband's building the water wheel, the 18-foot overshot water wheel for the new people that own the mill. And so I'm going to take pictures of that, put that up because I think what's really cool is that, like I said, you can touch this place and stuff where I cultivated Callie, where she works and all this kind of stuff. But you could go in and see so much history, and I'm definitely a preservationist of history. So, and I think that's part of the reason why I so love this series because it's got my components. I love history, I love legends, and I love trying to sort the mess out that comes about when you put paper and pen together and your mind starts working and you start writing.
Yeah,
So,
I feel like YA fantasy is always so like fast paced and fun, and you're jumping from like one challenge to the next challenge. Do we get to know who are the bad people yet in the first book? Do we know
yeah,
what
yeah.
Callie's up against?
Yes, most definitely. You get to know that Callie's up against something right from the start. Probably this right at the end of the second chapter. Because you have to keep that momentum going, but yet you have to allow the reader to build that angst and stuff up. And it was beautiful listening to my daughter and other reviewers say they did not see that coming. And so, yeah, I was really tickled. And I don't know, I'm just very thankful that I've had such good endorsements from really outstanding people, but also the reviewers have given it really nice, favorable reviews. So I'm tickled about that. But it's definitely a fast pace. But the romance does not, it's definitely there. It's front and center. And it's definitely something that you need those two because, okay, I'm not giving a spoiler. I'm not going to tell that. You have to go into book two, which gives that spoiler. But yeah.
Fine. Well, talk to me about the short stories. Can they be downloaded from like Amazon and an ebook, or do you have to get them on your newsletter, or how do those work?
I could do either, but they are definitely November, December, and January, three of the five short stories launched already. And so that journal that I told you about that was kind of like Diary of a Wimpy Kid vibe, that's out there. And I went back and I gave history to Callie, which is my main protagonist. I gave history to her mom and dad. And it relates to book two in the story. So that's a prequel, but that's about 5,000 words, 7,000 words. And they're free on Kindle Unlimited.
Oh,
So
fun.
yeah, even my main book is 99 cents for
Oh,
450 pages. So, you know, it's out there.
that's a great deal for a first release, and it sounds like so fun to jump into. Do you have so once you get this series done, do you have ideas for other series? Are you going to go different places, or are you going to keep building this world?
I am actually building this world. Um, it's so ingrained in me, and Callie is such a part of my life that I've already started writing a standalone related to this world. So you've got the prequels, which there's five, three prequels, and then two short stories in between. Then you've got the three main novels, and then I am making sure that every standalone from here on out could stand like on its own, but it's going to be anchored into this world. But I like to take my characters not just to Ohio, but to other countries. And I've traveled quite extensively. So I like to anchor them into another setting and stuff like that with the fantasy elements and aspects and the powers and the legends that go with that area. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, my favorite kind of fantasy is kind of that urban fantasy where, and maybe because I like to imagine that there's really witches and vampires and all those things running around in our world. My kids kind of make fun of me, but anyway,
Mine do too. Mine do too.
like, what if? I think it could really be true.
Yeah, my daughter made fun of me and in a positive way until she read my book. And she's like, Mom, I can't believe this. And I was like, what? She goes, I did that. I did that. And you wrote about it. Yeah. So, but hey, what better instrument than what you've seen your daughter do? And then it's real life, it's urban, it's as far as you know, it's reality, it's plausible that you could do that. And then I morphed it into something a little bit more fantasy element oriented. So, yeah,
That's good that she reacted that way. It was like, Mom, one of my friends read this.
yeah, yeah. She's very much a big support. And you know, the how do you say, my son was not into it at first until I kept on bugging him, especially on the last book. The second book, he was like, what are you up to? I said, oh, don't worry about it. But I kept on going to him on the last book because I have some major fight scenes and he's a martial artist. And so I said, how do you do this and what's that called? Well, he would enact all those scenes out with me and the movements, and then I'd be taking notes. And it didn't matter if it was a napkin because we were sitting down, and I was like, "Well, how many pounds of pressure on the eyes does this happen?" He'd say this. I'm like, "Okay." And so then he finds out later, you're really putting that stuff in there. I'm like, well, yeah, why not? You know, do you think I just talked to you to blow air? No, I want that stuff in there. That's concrete stuff. So anyhow, yeah. So I have both my kids that have been brainiacs with this. And then a huge blessing is, okay, so the powers in the Theron world are not magic. No, they're based, elements of them or aspects of them are based off innate powers, um, and science. And so my husband is like really like way out there, like one of those brainiacs that like, okay, bring it down to dumb it down for Cyndi, you know? So, so he worked a lot on stuff like that with me. But the hardest part of writing all three of these books was being anchored into the history, the research, because the settings you wanted to get as close as you could to the reality of it without losing the integrity of that. And you wanted to anchor the reader into that. And yet, morphing it with that fantasy aspect really and powers and stuff like that, which everybody's into those powers, but for me, I didn't want to do a wand and say, oh, magically it appears or whatever. And I respect everybody who does that. I wanted to have a reason, scientific or whatever, was plausible, you
Right,
know?
a little more sci-fi. Yeah. Well,
It-
and that, I mean, that kind of feeds into this could really happen, right?
exactly.
Or the feeling that this could really be true, or this, yeah. So
Yeah.
you're immersed in that world and it feels comfortable.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so this dates me, but I really liked, okay, so a long time ago, I liked, well, and I still do. I love Twilight, okay? But I think the thing that was kind of really cool about it is you could go to Forks, you know, and you could check things out. I just thought, wow, that's just kind of like cool, you know? It didn't, how do you say, click in my head until I figured out, well, I've got Callie. Where am I doing with Callie? She kept stalking me like mentally, like all these images, and it's like, what do I do with her? And then I realized anchoring her into the history of like this world, like the urban setting, the urban fantasy aspect, and then world building around that aspect into another lost civilization. I mean, wow. So
Well,
it's just fun.
I can't wait to dig in. I'm going to look these up right after this. So Cyndi Brec, Cyndi, Brec, Brec.
Yes.
Tell us where we can find all your books.
Okay, so definitely Amazon. And I'm also on Kobo, Barnes and Noble, that kind of stuff. So definitely check them out. And in addition to that, I have a book tour coming up, a 12-week book tour coming up this fall. So I'm very, very excited about that. My publicist has been working on it very, very hard. And so I'm really excited about that. We'll see where all of this goes. Ultimately, it's just a passion, and I don't know, I just love writing. So,
So where is your book tour? Where are you going to be?
well, I'm centering it mostly around Ohio right now because my story takes place in Ohio, and I've got quite a few main bookstores lined up. But I'm working on fine tuning some smaller aspects before. I've got like 5 set up right now, and I've got a few more that I've got to work on. But I'm just gonna like do one a week. But I will be posting it on all my social media sites so that everybody could see the 12 weeks and where it's gonna break down and where I'll be at what time and stuff like that. So, but yes, and at that time, I'm going to have the reveal and the book cover done for book 2. So.
That sounds super fun. And I think you do a podcast as well, right?
Actually, I partnered with somebody. He already had it established prior to me, but his name is Peter, and he has English literature, and we've known each other a couple years, and just out of the middle of nowhere, he's like, "Hey, do you know anybody that wants to podcast?" I was like, "Well, I could give it a try." 6 months later, we talk book banter and all that kind of good stuff, and we just have a good time. Our whole goal on English literature is just to give a voice, a platform to people that are really trying to get out there, and it's quite an honor, and it's a humbling honor just to be there with them and help them share their stories, their worlds, and everything like that. Help give them a voice to their story. So, but yeah.
Super fun. That's awesome, Cyndi. Cyndi Brec, the Therans Series, that's spelled Theran, right?
Correct.
Series.
Yes.
And you can look that up. And what is your website?
Okay, www.cyndibrec.com. It might say Inker's Pen, but that's me. So
Okay.
you can check that out. And if you're interested in anything, I do respond to emails. So if anybody wants to reach out, it's at the bottom down there. And sign up for my newsletter if you want. Legends,
Great.
Myths and Lies.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And I will definitely have you back when you launch your second book.
I look forward to that, Trisha. I really do. And thank you.
Thank you, Cyndi. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Trisha Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.